kind of random.
What up, y'all? Welcome to another edition of That Time in Hip Hop, a podcast about the history, the nostalgia, but more importantly, the preservation of hip hop music and culture. I am your host, Vegas of Hip Hop Now podcast. With me, as always, the homie Tony of IntoTheDome.com. What's good, man?
What's up, man? Look, ginger and cayenne, turmeric, man, very healthy drinks and kombucha, man. So trying to start this Sunday morning off on the healthy side, brother. What's good?
Yeah, you got to do that, man. You got to. But if you are watching for the very first time, again, this is a podcast about history and hip hop, and it's not really about just reminiscing on things. It's more so about putting them in historical context, using facts, some things we heard, our experiences at the time, especially being from two different locations in the United States, and kind of bringing it all together. So by the end of the episode, you appreciate the artist or the film or the album or whatever it was we talked about. We got basically 50 episodes of content that you can go back and check out because it never gets old. That's the thing about classic hip hop. That's the thing about being a hip hop fan. It should never be old. So watching our first episode to watching this episode, you still will get the same level of content and perspective on whatever it is, the subject we're going to talk about. And we like to do a segment called This Week in Hip Hop. And This Week in Hip Hop, the date was November 10th, 1998. Pete Rock released his compilation album, Soul Survivor. Very dope album. Tone, 1998, November of 1998. Pete Rock releases Soul Survivor. What's your thoughts when it comes out, and what's your thoughts about the album as a whole?
I mean, you know, you heard rumblings, man, about Pete Rock and CL Smooth not vibing no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's like, wait a minute now. We already dealt with this with Q-Tip and Fife and, you know, Eric and Parrish and, you know, just other people up to that point were like, well, you know, I kind of like Pete Rock and CL Smooth together. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know what to expect, but then I had to remember that even though Pete Rock did rhyme some throughout their career on the first few albums, he is a producer at heart. So it's like, okay, 1990 was a dope time for hip hop. He has props, as they used to say back then, so he can get a lot of dope MCs, you know what I'm saying, on the album. So then I kind of felt a little better, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, when I heard it, man, it kind of exceeded my expectations, man, because I was like, wow, I expected it to be kind of dope. But he got everybody on, you know, Wu-Tang Clan member and Big Pun and Corrupt. And I was like, okay, he pulled it off, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and truthfully, it was probably some of Pete's, you know, most versatile production at that time, because of course he had done a, you know, production in-house, you know what I'm saying, with CL Smooth. He had, you know, done his production with, you know, some stuff with Nas and Heavy D and, you know, a lot of other artists, but, you know what I'm saying, I didn't expect it to be so diverse with the sound. I mean, yeah, it was still Pete Rock, you know, drums and stuff like that, but, you know, he really did more. So he did some scratching on there, man. It was just, it was a big record, man. You know what I'm saying? So before I get into any of the songs and favorites, man, what did you think about it when you first heard it?
Honestly, like before, when I saw like the advertisement for it, before I actually heard it, I didn't even know what to think, because, you know, especially back in the 90s and maybe like the early to mid 90s and definitely the 80s, you know, if you were hot for a time, and then when you weren't hot, it was just, you were just written off, like you fell off, and that was it for your run. All we could do was look back when you were successful. So to see a new Pete Rock compilation coming out that's not Pete Rock and CL Smooth, I was just like you. I was skeptical about the beats. I was skeptical about others on his beats, even though he had produced for others. It was like there was a Pete Rock sound I was used to from back in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. And I didn't know what to expect with all these different artists and what his beats sound like in 98, given all the stuff that was going on. But when I did hear the album, man, like you said, it was a variety I didn't expect. I almost was like, couldn't really figure out what Pete Rock's sound was anymore, because everybody had their own sound as producers. And Pete Rock showed a lot of versatility where I didn't recognize those as Pete Rock beats because you know it wasn't horns and stuff like that like earlier.
That's true.
Yeah, but records like True Master, man, like stand the test of time, man. One of the dopest Inspector Deck verses, you know what I'm saying? He got Big Pun on the album, like you said. Very, very in that hip hop bag, like that traditional hip hop bag for those who may have never heard it.
You
would
know
you
what,
call it a classic, John?
man, you know what? Definitely in the underground sense of, you know, for hip hop purists, I think it's not a stretch giving it kind of that kind of label. Of course, universally, you know, you can't really call it maybe a universal classic, maybe. But in terms of hardcore East Coast hip hop, but not even just East Coast, because when we thinking about it right now, you know, yeah, he had like on True Master, he had Deck, but he also had Corrupt on there. Then he had a track with MC8 on there. And I'm just looking now, you know, yeah, you know, when you have MC8 and Corrupt, you know, Ghostface, Raekwon, Laurel Tariq Peter Guns, Cool G Rap, Black Thought. Oh man, you know, it's so many people on there. You might call Common. You know what I'm saying? You might have to call it. Yeah, it might get that underground classic joint, man. Definitely one of Pete Rock's best fully produced projects. I would put maybe top 3. You could put it up there maybe with Mecca and the Soul Brother, the main ingredient, and that one that's probably his best 3 productions. Now people call those other 2 classics. You know, some people might call this one as well because the MCN on the album was stellar. Method Man, everybody on there. So the MCN was stellar on there. The beats were stellar. But I would give it more of an East Coast. You know, East Coast people were crowned before it's crowned universally, man. But he didn't miss a step, man. He blended in with 1998 when you had Hard Knock Life and you know, Pun album. You know, Nori was large at the time, and Aquemini, he still was able to blend in with DMX, of course, and he was able to still blend in and make very, very dope, man. So, you know, for people who haven't heard that Soul Survivor, haven't heard in a while, man, I would definitely pop that in, man.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like an underground classic or a cult classic, in the same sense of it's not overall like by every hip hop fan considered this is a classic album, but as far as underground traditional sounding hip hop, it's one of the best albums. You know, that a person would feel comfortably saying it's a classic or it's a cult classic or whatever. But definitely a dope album. Y'all should check it out if you've never heard it. Like Tone said, man, it's 98 was a dope time and there was a lot of MC and the lyrical bar was high. So, you know, the album, and again, this is Pete Rock kind of making sort of a comeback after being somewhat in the shadows for a minute. And he brought it with all the MCs that were on there, the beats that are on there. It's definitely worth your time if you call yourself a hip hop fan. But now let's get into the main ingredient, the main part of the show. You see the brother outlined there. You see the first album. Now, Tone, tell the people who we here to talk about today.
You know, in Vegas life, man, certain people come into the room and it just feels warm, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, that person right there got the right energy, man. You know, you smile when you see that person. You smile when you hear that person's like voice and things of that nature. And so today, one of the people or the person we're going to talk about is none other than Heavy D, man, because Heavy D was like your cousin, you know what I'm saying, who from around the way, you knew he was coming over to stay that weekend to hang out with you and stuff. You was excited, you know what I'm saying, because, you know, the vibe was always right. The energy was always right. And, man, we're going to dig deep today into why, for whatever reason, sometimes we forget and we overlook the amazing and great contribution of Heavy D, man, what he had on the culture. And I think people, you know, when I say culture, I mean on all the hip hop, he's very important to what we see today in our music, man, and innovation and all kind of things, man. But it's just, it feels good to know that he left like some legacy, man, for us to aspire to be, man. And first thing first is that energy and that vibe, because good energy and good vibe can take you somewhere very far in life, man. So I just remember real quick, my brother, of course, spinning some records, and I heard Mr. Big Stuff, man. I think this was maybe around 87. Saying I'm in junior high, and I'm like, yo, he's different from, at the time Rakim had Paid in Full. You had, your G Raps and your symphonies, and what I'm saying, the KRS-One. But when Heavy D came, it was time to party again and dance, and like I said, have a good time. And it wasn't corny. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't whack. And I remember my sister was like, man, that big dude can move. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so she liked him. My brother was spinning the records. You hear little parties up the street on the corner and stuff. People playing Heavy D right along with Public Enemy and everybody. And they're like, and like I said, he didn't come off forced. He was a big cool dude who was still grooving. And then, the Overweight Love in the house, some also popping at the time. It was like, yo, this dude right here, even in the midst of this whole new golden era post, Run DMC and Houdini and everything, he was putting in and getting run in the clubs, the skating ring, and stuff like that. I mean, I was like, okay, we got something going. So this is the beginning of Heavy D. So I just wanted to say, he started blending in well with that era, that golden era, that people forget that he's part of that and still was able to transition, man. But what did you think about Heavy D? Like the first time you heard Heavy D? Do you remember the first time you heard Heavy D?
First time I heard Heavy D was Mr. Big Stuff, but it was the video. And I saw the title and I remember Mr. Big Stuff, the old record, you know what I'm saying, the old R&B soul record. And I knew it was hip hop, but I wasn't familiar with Heavy D. So when it came on, like you said, man, I was just like, this record is dope because, for one, Heavy D kind of had an ill voice. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was raspy, but it was aggressive. You know what I'm saying? And it was a lot of power behind his voice. And then, like you said, between that, Mr. Big Stuff and Overweight Lovers in the House, which that's like probably my favorite Heavy D record of all time, because the energy behind that record is just insane. But I was the same way. I'm like, yo, this big dude dancing his ass off. Like, and I guess for people who don't know, when you hear Tone say that about, this Heavy D could move, or you hear me say this, the same thing, the main reason why we're saying that as it relates to hip hop is because who did we have before that was big? The Fat Boys, right? Fat Boys didn't do too much dancing. Like they moved a little bit, but they didn't really do too much dancing. And also their act was a little bit more comical. Whereas Heavy D was an MC and he can dance. He was similar to Big Daddy Kane in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? With the taping. And you just didn't know like where is this dude coming from? You know what I'm saying? He just came out of nowhere. So yeah, I was impressed the first time I heard and saw Heavy D, man, because I just knew he was dope off of those two records alone.
Yeah, man, and him shouting out Mount Vernon. Me personally, I'm in North Carolina. Of course, at that time in hip hop, I heard about, of course, Brooklyn because of Big Daddy Kane. Like it was Long Island and stuff with Eric B. Rakim and all of that. EPMD and stuff. Of course, Queens with G Rap and LL and stuff like that. So I knew about those major boroughs and Harlem and stuff like that, but I didn't know anything about Mount Vernon. So I'm like, oh, who else from Mount Vernon? You know what I'm saying? He was shouted out, man. I was okay, so that opened up a whole new, lane for that. And of course, shortly after that, well, during that time, he's helping to bring hip hop to that new label called, Uptown Records. You know what I'm saying? So now not only is he just making his mark with the music, he's starting to bring talent, to Uptown Records and being like the first act, if I'm not mistaken, and is bringing that vibe in. And I think at some point, and we'll get into this a little more later, he was convincing Andre Harrell, if I'm not mistaken, to give a young guy, a young A&R named Sean Combs a chance. You know what I'm saying? And and him and Eddie F, who he met through Trouble T. Roy. We'll get into some Trouble T. Roy. Helped garner some talent and mold some talent there. And so now he's starting to be more impactful because it's bigger than the music, because Uptown Records became large at that time. You know what I'm saying? And Heavy D was kind of like at one point like the face of Uptown Records in terms of artists.
Yeah.
And
he was.
When he toured, yeah. His touring, his performances became, very popular. Like you said, at that time, performing was everything. Yeah, Big Daddy Kane and Scuba Scrap Lover, they really performing. He rhyming as an MC, be performing. So Heavy D and the Boys was kind of like the Mount Vernon version of, Big Daddy Kane and Scuba Scrap Lover. You know what I'm saying? And, at the same time, Heavy D was kind of becoming a ladies' man. You know what I'm saying? He was starting to rhyme, and chicks was like, I like Big Dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, because again, like you said, the Fat Boys, even though at some point Prince Markie D ended up being kind of a ladies' man or whatever, they weren't looked at as ladies' man in their prime. But Heavy D was like, the chicks will say, I date Big Dude. You know what I'm saying? So he's the first Big Papa. I'm going to get into some of that too. You know what I'm saying? But Heavy D is the first Big Papa. You know what I'm saying? And it started popping off like that. He started making songs that would garner, female attention. Like I said, again, the club scene. Heavy D was just popping at the time on the radio, and also helping to mold other Mount Vernon acts. He also had a younger cousin by the name of Pete Rock, who started doing work with him, and was also being mentored, by him and Eddie F and things of that nature, man. So, yeah, man. Do you remember how Uptown was starting to rise with Heavy D?
Yeah, like I think what unfortunately people tend to like forget, for those that were around or don't know or miss about Heavy D, is this dude had hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. Like he probably went a good 5 albums with Heavy D and the Boys having radio hit records on these albums, multiple in most cases. And a lot of it, he was like you said, a lot of his style and his presentation was Big Daddy Kane style and Scoop and Scrap as far as like how it would look. But obviously it was also unique to Heavy D. But also he was able to do records and be successful in the same vein as LL. Like you said, a lot of stuff for the ladies or whatever. In the same vein as someone like Father MC, who also wound up coming out of that same camp and doing records for the ladies. And again, this is at a time where usually the sex appeal cat or the heartthrob never looked like Heavy D. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it just didn't. Not back then, not in hip hop. Dudes usually looked the same way, young, slim, cut up or whatever. And though obviously Heavy D was young, you know what I'm saying, he was dispelling the rumor that a big dude can't be a sex symbol and make dope hip hop records and make records for the ladies and the radio. So I think, like you said, man, he definitely ushered in or maybe more so set the tone for a style of music for Uptown Records that would eventually have people like, Mary J do songs and, Father MC and stuff like that. And
I'll Be Sure and Jodeci as well.
I'll Be Sure, Jodeci. Yeah, like a certain vibe where it's hip hop with a little R&B twist to it. And obviously in later sides, but I think it worked in the same vein. And like you said, this is before Bad Boy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is. It is, and the thing about, he came, Living Large came out 87. I think it was a gold album. He had 2 big singles. And, a lot of people, they fall off after. They're very successful with their first album. I mean, only the greats kind of came back with a sophomore album, a junior album, a senior album, a college album, if you get what I'm saying, and can still maintain. Most artists don't last past their first album or 2, man. And, 3 years after Living Large, you got Big Time came out like 90. And so in 1990, you had Ice Cube and left NWA and had America's Most Wanted. Yeah, Public Enemy was still riding large on their 3rd or 4th album, and the emergence of Bonita Applebum and Tribe Called Quest and the brand, a lot of people starting to come out. And Heavy D still came again with, we got our own thing. You know what I'm saying? Produced by DJ F, and he was right back on the radio again. right back in the club again. You know what I'm saying? The dancing, the performances. He was, on Apollo and stuff like that, and he was still, he didn't lose any steam. You got his second album, Quality Again, and let's just go down for a quick second, man, before we get into some other things with Heavy D. I want people to understand his run. You got what's that? We got I Don't Think Somebody For Me was a huge track. Mm-hmm. And that's on the second album also. Somebody For Me still sounds good in the club right now in 2019. You know what I'm saying? It's a feel-good joint. Look, there's a video on YouTube with him performing that live at the Apollo. And when I tell you, when he came out, the crowd went insane. And people, the whole first few rows were women.
Mm-hmm.
First few rows were all women, and they were going crazy. He had the appeal, man. Right after that, you got 1991, Peaceful Journey. Now that we found love. Mm-hmm. Now, Don't Curse is an interesting one too, man, because look who he has on. He got Grand Puba and what is Big Daddy Kane and Kool Rap and
Rap. Yeah.
He's doing that in 1991 with heavyweights.
Yeah.
Because Vague, and I'll let you jump in. I want people to understand. Heavy D was not a novelty act. Heavy D is an MC.
Mm-hmm.
And I say is, now was, rest in peace to it, brother, but I'm going to say is because the energy never dies, man. And Heavy D did not sleep on the lyrics, because we'll get into some of that later as well. The dude could rap. He took his rapping serious. He took his verses serious. He was not no clown MC. He wasn't no big dude goofball. That's not Heavy D. Heavy D is thorough. Heavy D was legit. He was rhyming with other. You're on a track with Q-Tip, Kool G Rap, and Big Daddy Kane. Cats ain't playing, and Grand Puba was on the song.
Yeah, and they were hot back then. You know what I'm saying? They were like the cream of the crop. And just to go back just a little bit to draw that comparison again, I know we said he kind of was like what Big Daddy Kane was when Big Daddy Kane was at his heights, but I'll go on and say he was a little bit better, because when Kane dropped his third album, that was the end of Kane's run.
No, the end of Kane's run.
Kane did something with, what was it, Taste of Chocolate, with switching up the sound that, in retrospect, it was a little bit ahead of his time, but at that time, it was not what people wanted. But Heavy D did it, and he was successful with it. Tone just named a number of records like I Want Somebody to Love Me For Me. That's the kind of records that Kane was trying to make.
Hey, what about, is
trying to hit with. Is it good to you? Like, these were all the records that Kane was trying to do with Taste of Chocolate, but Heavy D was already doing them, and he was highly successful with them. I mean, you're talking about not only making records that can somewhat be considered R&B with rap, but I mean, now that we found love, that's a house record. You know what I'm saying? And
it is.
Besides maybe the Jungle Brothers, not too many rap artists were successful at making house records that were dope, but Heavy D was one of those guys who did that. Like you said, man, he's not a novelty act. And the proof was in the fact that you could tell he was being marketed as such originally because of how he was a bigger dude. Because, to call the first album Living Large, and you know what I'm saying, and Big Time, they were trying to play off of his size, you know what I'm saying? But obviously we saw that Heavy D was absolutely more than that. And this is the last point, is to speak to the skill part. Not only with Don't Curse, Heavy D probably got one of the dopest verses on Self-Destruction, which features a ton of people. Like, Heavy D is in his bag on that record. You know what I'm saying? And again, all of those attributes we explained before, voice, confidence, you know what I'm saying, driven message, it all comes through in his verse on Self-Destruction. So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Excuse me. Absolutely. And just going back to his peers again real quick, just some more context. So, a lot of people would say that Eric B. and Rakim, after Let the Rhythm Hit Him, that was their apex. It was kind of downhill from there with, from them. KRS-One had a long run, but like you said, Kane, after his second album, he was kind of done. You know what I'm saying? Slick Rick, because of his legal problems, after Great Adventures, he was done until like the rules back behind bars and all that midnight like '94. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of peers at the time started, they had a quick little run and they started disappearing, or their quality kind of went down. With Heavy D, he actually kept getting better because Living Large. Then we got Big Time. Then, like you said, Peaceful Journey is 1991, where he's still doing those big ballads and stuff. Then 92, he does Blue Funk, what some people call his underground album. And Blue Funk was hard. He had the hard beats. He had probably more Pete Rock on there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think he had some Marlon Moore, I think, and people correct me if I'm wrong if you look it up, but he had some hard beats on Blue Funk. He had the underground track. What's that? Who's the Man on there? The Blue Funk track.
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to say that that was also during that time. Well, '93 Blue Funk, excuse me. Biggie on a track called A Bunch of Niggas. Biggie Smalls makes one of his debuts into the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And maybe that happens because at that time or prior to that, Heavy D had a relationship with Puff already. Mm-hmm. He was the one trying to give Puff that A&R a chance in Uptown Records. So maybe Biggie being post first, like Big Ack or whatever, or Ack in general. I don't know the timeline with him and Craig Mack. I know it was all around the same time, but nevertheless, I'm sure that the relationship Puffy had with Heavy D got Biggie a verse on Blue Funk.
Yeah. And what the crazy part for me personally as a Biggie fan, that was the first time I ever heard Biggie. That was before Party and Bullshit. That was before Juicy, before any of that, where, I see his name is on here. And I think I saw a mention of him when I was reading a review for Blue Funk, because I was a big Heavy D fan. I was looking for each album that dropped all the way to that time, and to hear the rumblings of Biggie. And then he's on here, so I'm anticipating him. Guru's also on that record. And when Biggie versed him on, I'm like, yo, this dude is nice. I want to hear more of that. But like you said, to speak to his relationship with Puff, lets you know that was a lookout. I'm gonna give your artist placement on my album, because Heavy D was still big. He was still live as a hip hop artist.
Yeah, and it's funny when you go back now, just the correlation. Biggest first huge single. Now we're not talking about Party and Bullshit on Who's the Man soundtrack or anything like that. When Juicy come out, what does he say in the song? Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. You know what I'm saying? So he was paying homage to Heavy D. You know what I'm saying? And then once they did the One More Chance remix and the video, who's working the door for security? What did Heavy D say on Self-Destruction? Heavy's at the door, so there'll be no bum rushing. You know what I'm saying? So Heavy is working the door on Biggie's One More Chance video, and it made me, when I saw that, it made me think about the Self-Destruction verse. He was kind of playing it out on Biggie's. A lot of people didn't think about that. You know what I'm saying? But that just shows at that time he was still relevant. Now the funny part about that, during that time, babe, Heavy D drops to me his best album. Now we're 4 albums in, and now we're finna do Nothing But Love album. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was the album. I was like, oh man, Heavy. This is 1994, in the middle of Wu-Tang, Nas, of course, Biggie, like we talked about, the emergence of Outkast, Snoop is still large. Heavy drops Nothing But Love. Still around because Tribe and Wu-Tang came out a year prior in '93 with Midnight Riders in the 36 Chambers. So now Heavy D dropped in the middle of a second golden era, in my estimation, and he has big singles again. His younger cousin, who is already a legend in New York, Pete Rock, is making my favorite Heavy D songs like this: Sex With You, Nothing But Love, the video's dope, Black Coffee, Got Me Waiting. These are massive songs in 1994, singles on the radio, on BET videos, MTV. Heavy D is still a star in 1994 in the midst of Gang Starr and everybody else. He's still a star, man.
That's a crazy part. Like that's what's so easy to forget. You know what I'm saying? Like I know there are old heads who recognize Big Easy and Easy. I say Big Daddy Kane and Easy, but recognize Heavy D, as one of the best in hip hop. But they never think about like, yo, This dude been having hits since the late 80s. Hit after hit albums, radio records. And like you said, you're seeing artists that we love come and go. You're seeing a new era that's totally different from Heavy D's sound come out and dominate East Coast. And he's still putting out hits with Heavy D and the Boys. You know, it's remarkable when you sit back and think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and just some more context, he drops in '87 during the golden era. Now we're talking about 1994. He has a gold, like basically a gold album with Nothing But Love, gold singles, all the success. Who else from 1987 was still doing that in 1994? At that time, Rakim was gone. KRS-One did have Return of the Boom Bap in '93, so he was still on the underground scene, still repping, no doubt. G-Rap was more underground again, and now at that time, LL was cold now because Mr. Smith was a year out. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So he's cold now. All the other artists at that time, Ice Cube done fills it out a little bit now on the West Side, things like that. So he's still on the charts. After being on the charts at the same time, your Houdinis and all of them on the charts, he transitioned all the way up to '94 and we're still going. And we'll keep going further in a few minutes.
Real quick to add to what you said, he also was still rocking during the Death Row era, which is that early the Chronic and the Doggy Style era, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, he still had hits. You know what I'm saying? And the funny thing about that is, so there might be such thing as luck in life, but at some point with continued success, it's not luck, it's skill. It's time, and it's knowing what you're doing. And so for him to go through these eras, and all these other big artists had their time when they were the number one, he stayed gradual, and he gradually just kept doing him, kept making dope albums and dope songs. People never looked at him like, all right, man, time for Heavy D to hang it up. Think about that. I don't remember a time when somebody was like, man, I don't really rock with Heavy D no more. It was like, hey, new Heavy D out, dog, it's hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was always kept the people that enjoyed his music, they always enjoyed it. And again, Heavy D don't have no whack albums. You know what I'm saying? He don't have no whack songs, he don't have no whack verses like that. You could say certain albums were better produced or something like that than the other, but he's not a whack MC. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he essentially never actually fell off. Because even after the '94 joint, he was still doing music. You know what I'm saying? When he went with the Boys, he was still doing his solo stuff, the Waterbed Hells. And since we said something about the big person, that song Big Daddy, I would challenge anyone right now, go on YouTube after this show, put in Heavy D, Big Daddy, listen to the flow and cadence. Come back and talk to me about, I know Biggie was influenced by Heavy D. Because I listened very closely to rhyme patterns, and trust when I tell you, Heavy D is Biggie Smalls' big homie. Trust me when I say, go listen to Big Daddy, go watch the video for Big Daddy, and you tell me that Biggie Smalls wasn't being influenced by that moving forward with his career.
I think one thing too that sitting here talking about Heavy D and reminiscing, we also and people also forget Heavy D also had a lot of hits with dancehall artists. Like in the midst of all, he had didn't he have a joint with Shabba Ranks? Like back in the early '90s, like he had a couple of records that were off to the side that weren't on the albums. That you know what I'm saying?
And he had reggae influence on because Heavy D was reggae also, was Jamaican.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Excuse me.
Exactly.
Yeah, those kind of tracks, the dancehall track, the reggae tone type tracks. I mean, he could. And again, we'll be remiss that we didn't say this also because I think this is gonna really take it to another level. So look, man, another thing, Vague, Heavy D's recruited, man, by Janet Jackson to be on the All Right song and the All Right video. I mean, this is Janet Jackson in her prime, man. Like I said, it's amazing to look at what hip hop was going. When you got a major worldwide star saying, okay, we're gonna bring Heavy D in to not only do the song but on the video. After that, you know what I'm saying? Heavy D he's recruited to do a song with Michael Jackson on Jam. You know what I'm saying? So now you have Heavy D. He's had his own solo success with the group. He has a song now with Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. And They're singles. And what I'm thinking to myself is, has that ever happened to another artist in hip hop history? They did a song with Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson and was on videos with both of them. I don't think that's ever happened, but it shows the influence, the skills, the demand for Heavy D at that time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, again, the more we talk about it, the more you see how the legend of Heavy D, the artist, the MC, the performer, is, because he also had probably the dopest version of the intro song to In Living Color, which was a huge sketch comedy program that rivaled Saturday Night Live back in the 90s. And Heavy D did the intro, the theme song to that, and it was dope. It was a dope ass record. It's one of them things where you sing, like, you sing that before the show comes on because you love how the song starts, how the show starts. This is all the stuff that Heavy D was doing, the demand he had, the range he had to do different types of records. It just all speaks to this man's talent, man. Now, Tone, we know about how we've worn it out as far as Heavy D, the artist. But what people don't know, and you're going to fill them in, is Heavy D, the executive. He definitely went on to have a couple of acts. He definitely went on to work with Puff in some capacity, and he eventually went on to also do production. Talk about Heavy D, the executive, and we'll get into him also as the producer.
Well, man, again, his executive hat came on actually in the late 80s. It started with recruiting and bringing, working with DJ Eddie F and stuff, getting that talent in the Uptown, helping Andre Harrell and those guys push that label. So it started then. You know what I'm saying? It started with him working with Al B. Sure and mentoring those guys and stuff like that. So he was already in his bag with that stuff anyway. He's always had his hands in some of a lot of working with Eddie F and them on productions and stuff like that. So he was always kind of in the mix. But what I didn't know at some point, Heavy D could make beats. You know what I'm saying? He produced records. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, he produced the Guns N' Roses on Jay-Z's Blueprint 2. You know what I'm saying? That's a hard beat. That's Heavy D. Also as an executive, he finds Soul for Real. You know what I'm saying? He's the producer behind Soul for Real, and he put the Candy Rain song together. He's one of the reasons why you still dancing 20-some years later to Soul for Real in the club. Yeah. That's still an offspring of Heavy D. You know what I'm saying? Now, I haven't seen too many people say a lot of bad things about Heavy D, but there was an interview on the Breakfast Club where, Soul for Real did have their own version of how they felt like business-wise it worked out with Heavy D. They said they had love for him, respect him, but they said some of the business they felt like wasn't right. But again, this is also a group who never progressed after Heavy D, and of course, record labels and record deals. If your talent don't sustain, a lot of times you might feel like you got jerked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that happened or didn't happen, but because they had their own personal issues as well. But Heavy D did make them stars. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And that's, like you said, that's a huge hit record that, like, literally I get tired of it now because it's always on. It's still always on. Including, Heavy D also working with Monifa, who she had a hit record. He was also featured on there. Ramen, like it, like, I guess the thing too, also, like you said, with Soul for Real and some of the things they felt about the business, it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. It didn't start with black executives, and it won't end with white executive. It is the nature of the record industry to at least educate yourself on some level of what you're going to have to deal with and what you can get for your talents and what you create. And like you said, man, it didn't really materialize after they got off Heavy D's label. So, that also.
And let me say this too, just real quick. The final thing about Soul for Real is this, though. If anyone look at the credits, Heavy D was a part of writing their songs and producing their songs. You had other collaborators on both sides, but they didn't write and produce their own music. And you're trying to split stuff 4 ways. So a lot of people don't understand what that means when someone writes and produces your music, and you're in a band. You know what I'm saying? So it is the nature of the beast, man. But at the same time, he did work with them, Monifa, and a lot of other acts, man. And from what I've heard, he was always well respected. Outside of that one interview, when they kind of felt they was probably more upset that their career didn't pop off the way it should. And I even think some of them did some prison time for some credit card fraud or theft or something. I think they had some issues, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, dig deep into that story, you'll see it really wasn't Heavy D. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, looking now, how many of the artists or people in general in the hip hop culture has anything other than like praise for Heavy D, who is a hip hop legend? We talk on Twitter all the time about who's a hip hop legend. Well, people, we're talking about a hip hop legend right now that you can go look at their resume and their influence and their impact, and it goes without saying, man. But yeah, as an executive, he also did a great job as well.
Yeah.
Come on, that single sold 1 million copies, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And like you look at the wait, what single was that? You talking about Candy Rain?
Candy Rain sold 1 million copies.
Yeah, exactly. And look, to go back also to his later production, I mean, Nas's Don joint, Heavy D produced that. That was the lead single of Life Is Good. You know what I'm saying? And he says it in a record. Heavy D sent him the beat, you know what I'm saying? Or sent Salaam Remi the beat.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So just real quick, now you just brought me back to some earlier points again. So now just real quick perspective again. You got a man in Heavy D who helps build Uptown Records. He does a song with Michael Jackson. He does a song with Janet Jackson. He produces a song for Jay-Z. He produces a song for Nas. He is an influence on Biggie Smalls, you know what I'm saying, on so many levels. I mean, just those 5 things right there is some legendary and monumental achievements and accomplishments in the culture, man. Wow.
Yeah, and
it's amazing.
The crazy part is, you know, you can't really fathom his impact until you talk about it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole point of this show and why we do this. The more you talk about it, the more you realize this dude's impact throughout the years. That's influenced a ton of artists. He was respected by a ton of artists. You know, to get production credit on a Jay-Z album, to be the lead single on Nas's second comeback album in Life Is Good, to help usher in, you know, people like Nas is back again. That all came from Heavy D. And when you think about it, like, there aren't many artists, you know, who start out as just artists in the game that have that kind of track record, that leave that kind of imprint on the game. And you would think it would be recognized a little bit more, but that's what we're here for. Now, also, Tone, around that time when that beat was sent to Salaam Remi to give to Nas, unfortunately, Heavy D passed away.
Oh, man.
The day you heard Heavy D passed away, what was your first thoughts?
You know, I'm not one of those people who are, you know, emotionally attached to like celebrity like that, you know what I'm saying? But there are a few celebrities who, for whatever reason, you felt like you knew him. You know what I'm saying? Never met the man a day in my life. But he's one of those ones on a short list for me personally. When I heard that, I had to just take a step back real quick. I'm like, Heavy D? Heavy D gone? You know what I'm saying? Because he always had the energy that I love from way back in junior high with Mr. Big Stuff, Overweight Love. And I was just like, man, this one hurt, man. Like, I was like, then I went online, looked at his stuff, I looked at Twitter. So let me say this. Because of the life he led and lived, his last tweet was 2 words: be inspired. He tweeted that a couple hours before he passed away, man. Not no ratchetness, not no nonsense. It just shows the type of heart and the type of man that Heavy D is and was, because energy never dies. His final tweet was be inspired. You know what I'm saying? And I never forget that, man. And I damn near shed a tear seeing that, man, because it resonated with, you know what I'm saying, with real life, with the human side of someone who ain't on social media to be this, that, and the third. He was a real person, man. And that one was one of the tough deaths in hip hop for me. One of the top 3 or 4, I was like, damn, that's like my cousin passing away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just knowing that was his final words, man. Words are very powerful, man. And, it's how people remember you, man. I remember that tweet got thousands and thousands and thousands of retweets because people was like, you know what? If that's the way you're going to go out, that's why I respect someone like Heavy D to physically leave this earth, man. Very deep.
Yeah, I felt the same way, man. The minute I heard about it, I think my first thoughts is like, you do feel like a family member has passed or a friend has passed, because your first thoughts is like, what happened? How could this happen? You know what I'm saying? Because Heavy D he wasn't like an older guy, maybe in his 70s or 80s or whatever, so it's a little bit more expected.
He's 44.
He was 44?
I'm 44. He was 44 years old.
He was 44 years old. So, you know what I'm saying? So to look at him passing at such a young age, and especially when we're not expecting that to happen because we don't know anything about his health or nothing like that. And it was just a sad day in hip hop. And then also for me to discover that tweet and to see that he put something like that out there and happens to pass away not too long after it, says a lot about who Heavy D was every day of his life. It basically gives you the ingredients as to why he was able to accomplish so much in so many areas of entertainment and kind of be able to work with the who's who. I mean, when you're working with Michael Jackson to Nas and Biggie and everybody else, and you're bringing Pete Rock in the game, you're doing all these different things. You're helping usher in Bad Boy Records, and you got your own label. Like that's someone that needs to be cherished. That's someone who needs to be remembered. You know what I'm saying? He needed his flowers before he passed, but to be honest, we're going to give it to him anyway, because that is the point of a program like this, is to remember what this guy did and look how his final words, so to speak, were. Like to look and see what those were says a lot about Heavy D and why he's important to the hip hop game. And as a hip hop fan, you should be proud that he was a part of this art form and he stood up for this art form in different levels of the game. But before we move on from the main topic, first of all, obviously, leave your comments about Heavy D in the comment section below. You love him, you like him, favorite songs, favorite albums, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the case may be, leave that in the comment section below. But I did want to run over some of his production credits. Right before I do that, though, let's not forget, Heavy D also did a lot of acting. He was on a lot of programs. He was in Living Single back in the days. He was on other sitcoms. Heavy D did a lot of acting as well. He was in some films. The man did it. He did it all, to be honest. And he was good at it. But here's a couple of credits from a couple of notable projects. He did some production on Eddie F's compilation album that came out in 1994 called Let's Get It On, if you remember that lead single. He also was a composer and producer on a couple of episodes of New York Undercover, which was a cop show out of the 90s, mainly known for not just being a cop show, but its music. You know what I'm saying? Because that was the first time you was getting that much hip hop in a program on television. It was almost unheard of at that time. He also was a producer on the Money Train soundtrack out of 1995. That's the what was that? Charlie Sheen and Chris Tucker, right? I think that was that movie out of
the Money Train. Money Train might have been Wesley Snipes and
Money Train. Money Train. That's a different joint. You're right. Money Train was Wesley Snipes and what's his name from
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson.
Money Talks. Money Talks is Chris Tucker.
Money Talks. Yeah. Also, obviously we mentioned Soul For Real and Monifa. He did a couple of joints on there, did a lot. He also did some production on Total's second album, Kima, Keisha, and Pam, which is actually a very slept-on album. It's very dope album.
I didn't know he did production on there.
Yes, it's crazy. Like the more I go through, he also did some production on McGruff. If you don't know, McGruff was a part of Children of the Corn, which
Yeah, Harlem, baby.
Cameron and Mace and you know what I'm saying, and Killer. He did some production work and a guest artist on Babyface's album Face to Face out of 2001. This is getting crazy, man. The more I go through it, I'm like, where did that come from? Also, BBD Bell DeVoe, he did some programming and producing and instrumentation on that album. This was probably like a mastering, because this was like 2001 when he did that. He did some production on Timbaland and Magoo's album Under Construction Part 2 out of 2003. I was convinced that was all Timbaland, but apparently Heavy D did some production. He did some production on Fabulous album Street Dreams. I bet you didn't know that.
Wow, I didn't.
That's crazy. Like Heavy D working with Fabulous is crazy. Also, he did some production on Lil Mo's album, Meet the Girl Next Door. He also, now Tone, tell me if you knew this one, because I did not know. 2005, Heavy D did production on Beanie Siegel's The Becoming.
I did know that.
Okay.
I was looking through the production credit because I think during The Becoming, Siegel was locked up, and I remember looking into the album and stuff like that, and I actually saw his name on a track or so. Man, it threw me off. You know what I'm saying? But then I had to remember, just a few years prior to that, he had done that Guns N' Roses on the Blueprint 2. So I did know that one. I did not know about the Fabulous though. That Fabulous thing brand new to me, but I knew about the Beanie Siegel.
Yeah, I did not know at all, man. So again, y'all, crazy. Heavy D was working always. You know what I'm saying? Man. Whether he's acting, whether he's putting out another album, whether he's producing or trying to bring up a new artist, Heavy D stayed working. He stayed inspired, so to speak. So definitely rest in peace to a legend in the hip hop game, man. From both of us, man. But we're going to get into the final part of the show where we recommend something you should go back and listen to. And my recommendation for this week is out of the year 2011. It's a mixtape from Fabulous called The Soul Tape. Now, the reason why I recommend this is because it's kind of known in hip hop that Fabulous is a dope MC. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not to be disputed by those that don't really know him, especially from the mixtape days. But he's a dope MC that never really had that one album that capitalized on his skill. You know what I'm saying? It was always a couple of dope records and then some throwaways. And it mainly because the outlook for Fabulous on a major label was always the radio hits. So it kind of took away from what was dope about him. But on the mixtape side, Fabulous, that's where he made his name. And the Soul Tape out of 2011 was more so of Fabulous rhyming over recognizable beats that you'll remember in hip hop. Like he got a song that's the same, practically the same beat from Nas and AZ's More Money, More Murder, More Homicide, but it's more Brooklyn, more Harlem, more South Side, featuring Vado out of Harlem, out of the Cameron camp, and Lloyd Banks out of Southside Queens. This tape is nuts. It's dope. Like most hip hop heads loved it. Were surprised about it. Some people were even angry because they're like, yo, this is the kind of albums we want. But he did 3 of them. But out of the 3, this is still the best one of them all. Features just so many callbacks to hip hop, so many callbacks to familiar beats, very similar to Illmatic as far as getting a familiar track, but hearing either different parts of the sample that you never heard before, which kind of gives the record a little bit more life, makes it more different from what you were used to hearing it on, whether that's Tupac or Nas and AZ. Definitely dope, man. And you don't have to pay a dime. So all you got to do is look it up and go to one of the sites like datpiff.com or whatever. It's Fabulous, the Soul Tape. Tone, did you hear that mixtape? What were your thoughts on it, and what's your recommendation for this week?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, the Soul Tape was dope. You know what I'm saying? It was, when I heard it, I was like, well, damn, this is what I've been waiting for. You know what I'm saying? Like, truthfully, I was like, okay. I mean, no doubt he had his big radio hits on several albums, and that's what he was known for in the club with Lil Mo and all that stuff. So that was cool. That's how he got his paper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I remember hearing him on Clue when he first started, and I'm like, Fabulous can rap. You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to hear him rap over certain kind of beats, man. And the whole Soul Tape series was really showcasing his skills over some joints that we can bob our head to in the ride. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, the first one was my favorite one. It was very, very dope. I mean, he spit all the way through. The production, like you said, was altered a little bit from the original joints, but very dope. It's kind of like you can look at it like his album. It's kind of like an album to me.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I'm saying? I would go so far as to say, for me, it's his best project. You know what I'm saying? I like it better than everything he's done. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, shout out to Fabulous, man. That was a dope album. My recommendation is Brand Nubians. Everything is Everything. Dropped it in 1994. It was their third album, following All for One, and that's what was that second joint they had, man.
In God We Trust or something like that.
In God We Trust. In God We Trust was the second one. So yeah, they kept some of the deep things on Word Is Born and Hold On. You know what I'm saying? But then they still had, they got a little gritty on Punk Jump Up to Get Beat Down, and I like the video. You know what I'm saying? So they was doing that thing on now. They had this track on now called Criminal. And think about doing a prison time, man, and just hearing that reminded me of a Public Enemy type of song, man. And Everything is Everything was very dope to me, man. It came out in 94. I was in college. That's during the time of a lot of dope tracks, albums anyway. And to me, they didn't fall off. They were still making dope music, man. I'm a big Sadat X fan. You know what I'm saying? I enjoyed the production. Actually, Buck Wild and Lord Jamar did the production on Everything is Everything. You know what I'm saying? And it was gritty and hard to me. And I enjoyed it, man. I'm a Brand Nubian fan. I saw Brand Nubian again about a year ago here in North Carolina, man. I've seen them twice before down here, all three of them together. I was lucky enough to see all three of them together. But again, Everything is Everything is the third album, and Pooh is not on there. Pooh is not on God We Trust, and God We Trust either. Actually was only on, he's the star of One for All, and of course they came back on Foundation 4 years after this album. But I thought it was dope, man. Do you remember Everything is Everything, man? And was you still kind of, checking for Brand Nubians?
I honestly, in 1994, I was not. I think I was a huge fan in during the All for One days, mainly because I was a huge fan of Grand Puba. I was a huge fan of Grand Puba since Masters of Ceremony. When I heard him on the track "Sexy," I was like, "Yo, this dude is incredible!" And obviously with Brand Nubian, and then eventually with some of his solo records, I did pick up In God We Trust, because like you said, I mean, it still had Sadat X and Lord Jamar as the MCs. And I love Punk's Jump Up to Get Beat Down. I think for me, it was it didn't feel like Brand Nubian because Grand Puba wasn't there. So it kind of felt like a different group. And though I liked In God We Trust, I liked a couple records on there, I kind of started to not anticipate them as much unless they were going to say Grand Puba was coming back for the third project. So by the time Everything is Everything came out and everything else was out, Biggie was out and all this other stuff, my attention was just somewhere else until obviously Foundation. But even then, I felt like I kind of lost some of that anticipation. I don't think I've ever heard Everything is Everything. I've heard Foundation. I've heard All for One. I've heard In God We Trust, obviously. But that one I got to check out. So I'm definitely going to listen to it.
Check it out, man. Like, next time you go to the gym, I know you go to the gym. Throw Everything is Everything on, man. Let me know what you think, man, because it's hard, man. It's hard, bro.
And I like that. And I like the idea when you said Buck Wild and Lord Jamar worked on the beats. I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like something I should be listening to. You know what I'm saying? So, because I didn't know that. But what do y'all feel? Have you heard Brand Nubians Everything is Everything? Is it something you go out, check out? What about Fabulous? You think Fabulous don't make really good projects? You ever heard the Shootouts mixtape series? Summer Shootouts mixtape series? Have you ever heard the Soul Tape series? Check out the first Soul Tape. Is just as dope as a lot of the things he's done on the mixtape circuit. And leave your comments in the comment section below about those albums and mixtapes. That's going to do it for us for this week. We hope you enjoyed this program. And if you did, hit that like button. And if you loved it, subscribe to this channel, because you can stay locked into all of the content that we got coming every week. Again, if we missed a week because we can't do whatever because the schedules, there are more than 50 episodes there. And I know you ain't watched all of them yet. Or if you have, salute to you, definitely. But please know that this podcast is also available as an audio podcast. So wherever you listen to podcasts, all you have to do is type in the words Hip Hop Now Podcast, subscribe to that podcast, and within that same feed of Hip Hop Now Podcast, you'll also find the audio versions of That Time in Hip Hop. And if all of that sounds like too much, you can always visit intothedome.com and check out the video and the audio version that's linked on that website, as well as a number of articles from the homie Tony writing about some of your favorite hip hop artists to some of the favorite soul singers. It is very dope writing, videos, audio, everything a person who loves music would love to just basically lose themselves in. That's going to do it for us. So on behalf of the homie Tone of intothedome.com, I'm Vegas of Hip Hop Now Podcast. Go out and support real hip hop. Peace.
Peace.
Drop it on the random.